Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody out to our regular board meeting. Will everyone please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And next we'll have our roll call attendance. Madam Clerk.
Director Ray.
Here.
Director Kelly.
Here.
Director Kingman.
Here.
President Levesque.
Here.
Director Knapp.
Here.
Student Advisor Levon.
Here.
Student Advisor Nichol.
Here.
Superintendent Sweet.
Here. Thank you. Next up, we have our approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes to the agenda, or do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Make a motion, we approve the agenda. A second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Madam Clerk.
Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye. Thank you. The meeting agenda is approved. Next, we'll have our approval of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes. Regular meeting minutes from August 14th and our all-day workshop minutes from August 21st. Do we have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from August 14th?
Make a motion, we approve the regular meeting minutes from August 14th.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the regular meeting minutes from August 14th. Madam Clerk.
Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye. Thank you. Next up is our all-day workshop minutes from August 21st. Any changes, or do we have a motion to approve as presented?
Make a motion, we approve the all-day workshop minutes from August 21st.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the board all-day workshop minutes from August 21st. Madam Clerk.
Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Thank you. The minutes are all adopted. Next up is our public comment portion of the meeting. Do we have anyone signed up to speak in advance?
You do not.
Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to give public comment at this time? Or anyone here in the physical audience that would like to speak? Thank you. Next up, we'll have our public hearing. Just going to read a little blurb. We will now open the public hearing regarding the temporary easement and fueling facility agreement with PetroCard Incorporated. I'd like to introduce Brian Lunas, our Executive Director of Operations. Good evening, Brian.
Good
Thanks for
evening.
joining us.
Thank you for letting me be here tonight. Okay. So tonight I'm here to present to you really a resolution later on in the meeting, but there's a public hearing required because the resolution allows for a temporary easement onto property that we lease from the city of Arlington. And that kind of arrangement requires a public hearing and a resolution from the board to approve it or disapprove it. So the entities participating in this agreement that's proposed are Arlington Public Schools as the lessor, Bristol Bay Industrial as the lessee. We are leasing, a lessor leases to, a lessee leases from. So Bristol Bay is subleasing part of our transportation center in the industrial area over by the Arlington Airport. Perkins Coie has been our legal counsel throughout this process, and I'm so glad that they're with us. It is very complex in a lot of ways because it involves a fuel station and the environmental regulations around that. It involves the declaration of surplus as part of this property that we lease. And then there's a fueling agreement associated with this as well. All of this has been wrapped up or not expressed at all in prior agreements. So trying to make it as clear as we can, and dot the i's and cross the t's, so to speak. So the purpose of the agreement is to document the obligations and rights between us and Petrocard in this sublease agreement. We have had a lease arrangement, sublease arrangement with Petrocard since 1989, since we occupied the property with our transportation center. The most recent sublease expired in 2017. We had a variety of impediments to completing a new sublease. One of them is it's complicated arrangement. Second, COVID got in the way of everything. And then finally, by the time we got to the point where COVID was abating, we had to deal with renewing our own lease with the city of Arlington for the property. And Petrocard was unwilling to discuss further obligations until we finalized the renewal of that lease, which we did in 2022. So we were able to finalize this arrangement with Petrocard. So what does it do? What does this agreement do? It declares surplus part of the property that we lease from the city of Arlington and provides a whole network of terms that bind both Arlington Public Schools and Petrocard to this agreement and what our responsibilities are under that agreement. It also creates a fuel supply agreement between the school district and Petrocard and provides some surety for us in terms of the price that we would pay for fuel under this arrangement to provide fuel to our bus and motor pool fleet. So here's a list of all the contents of the agreement. It's exhaustive. There's quite a few terms in here that we all have to deal with. Most importantly are the rate that Petrocard will be paying for the facility, in addition to the easement that we allow. What their obligations are from an environmental standpoint. If there was a spill on the property, who's responsible for cleaning that, even if the spill occurs on Petrocard sublease land, if the spill makes its way over onto the property that we lease, that is the school district leases, then Petrocard is still responsible for cleaning up that. Now, that being said, part of the arrangement, I'll show you some pictures here. This is an aerial view of the leased property, and our bus barn has a much better looking roof on it now than it did. That's my graphic. Last fall. But you can see the dimensions of the property that are sublet and its relationship to 63rd Avenue in the industrial park and its relationship to our property. You can barely see the dispensers that are placed on our property that we use to fuel our buses on a daily basis. It's just below the fuel station itself. This is what the property looks like from the street. It's fairly old in terms of the equipment that's there. Good thing that the lease agreement provides for replacement of the equipment and furnishings, the structures on the site as well. You can see our school bus peeking out from behind one of the tanks. And that's the fuel station that's on our property that we control access to. So we're going to go through the list of items that the agreement requires that the Petrocard replace. After I talk about the pricing structure, our past agreement did not have an express listing of the costs that we would pay. Basically, it's the terminology is that they use here is OPIS. It's the rack price from the refinery plus freight cost to the Petrocard site, plus any fees or taxes that are required. For example, the document lists of additives that go into different kinds of fuel will result in additional costs. And then there's a markup list as well. which is 4 cents per gallon for gas, 4 cents per gallon for diesel. If we purchase at the Petrocard site on our property. If we purchase at other card lock facilities, Petrocard controls, and we'll pay that combination of rack price and fees plus 7 cents per gallon. And if we pay, if we buy at affiliates, then we'll pay transfer price, which is the rack price plus all the different fees, plus whatever the market is, so the affiliate plus 5 cents per gallon. We rarely buy from that third category. We most frequently buy from the top 2 categories. So it's nice for us that we've got this called out in the agreement, so we can have a price that we can rely upon moving forward. We do estimate this will save us some money in diesel fuel costs in the future. These are the list of improvements that Petrocard is going to have to make to their facility. They're ready to go. More than likely, this is going to happen in the summer of 2024. It's going to be installing new tanks, new dispenser pumps, new piping underground and above ground, a new canopy over the Petrocard dispensers. I tried to negotiate a new canopy for our dispensers, but they told me no, in excess of $100,000 names worth to do that. But I gave it a shot. Replacement of all the asphalt surfaces out there. Can't see it, but to the right of this image, it's a rock pit, basically, and it's just it's a temporary repair to the asphalt there. But the asphalt is in bad shape in that area. Oops. They're also going to add new pumps with card readers, electronic card readers on them, and repair and place extruded curbing. That's one of the requirements of this we have. So that's the basics of the agreement. Tonight, you're going to be seeing a resolution adopting the agreement later on. As we have to answer any questions that I can.
So was shocked by your first slide. How did the Arlington School District get in an agreement with a disreputable law firm like Perkins Coie?
Well, we inherited that basically.
Was that
But we have
by the
used
state- by the
Perkins.
state?
I'm sorry.
Was that presented to us by the state?
No. That's a long-standing relationship between the district and Perkins. And we have used them quite extensively in a couple of real estate-based transactions, and also they are our counsel when it comes to construction work that we do. I found them to be very capable.
Thank you.
I have a question. Oh,
No,
go
ahead. Please go.
I was wondering if, like what the timeline is for buses that are lower emissions, like maybe hybrid or electric, and if that is going to affect this timeline of the agreement, or if, like, I guess, if we would need to install anything else as far as like electric
Yes.
outlets for those buses and
Yes.
things in the future, and what's that looking like?
There would, no, that's a completely separate agreement. That's a lease agreement for the transportation center itself.
Mhm.
There would be extensive modifications required there
Yeah.
to provide enough electricity to charge buses
Mhm.
quick enough for us to get them back on the road.
Yeah.
They're not quite there yet. And some of our in-town routes, they would work, but some of the longer routes, up like Delphi 30 or south in the Cisco Heights, they don't have enough range yet for us. That in addition to the expense of the bus, yes, we can get grant money to get them for free, but those grants are difficult and sparse. We did apply for grant funding 2 years ago. And at that time, there were only 3 districts awarded grants for electric buses in the state, and we were not one of them. We only got 2 buses.
Okay.
So
Do we know if there's any districts around us that are able to get buses like that?
Lakewood has
Lakewood?
received
Okay.
one electric bus, and they're operating it. And they're pleased with it.
Yeah.
It's really the barrier for us is the facility improvements and the range of buses themselves.
Hey, Brian, I saw they're gonna add a deaf dispenser for their main one. Do we already have one at our little kiosk? You know,
No, we do that manually.
Okay,
We have a pump on site.
gotcha.
But the-
And that seems to work well. We don't need it.
Sorry,
And that seems to work well.
it's working good enough.
Okay, good. Thanks.
And Brian, is there anyone else using this facility besides Arlington Public Schools for fueling our buses?
Inside the fence? No.
Okay,
Outside the fence? Yes. Our wide range of entities use that, including Snohomish County. City. of
'Cause they're right
Arlington,
around there, yeah.
Snohomish County Sheriff's Office,
okay.
a lot of commercial businesses that Waste Management uses that.
So-
If you go out there and watch that site for half an hour, you'll see the whole parade of businesses that operate around there.
So we have this property and then we sublease that to Petrocard. And we don't, is there any money making on our part, or is it just an arrangement to have a discount on the fuel?
No, the money, we received some funding from the state or from Petrocard for the ground lease itself.
Okay,
It's not very much. It's about $8,000 per year.
okay,
That in combination with the discount on the fuel is where the value lies for us.
okay,
And having the pumps on our property is that we don't have to maintain.
okay,
There's a lot of value for us there as well.
okay,
Because we don't have to go wherever the pump is to get fuel.
right, okay,
Yes.
all right, good, thank you.
Brian, can you explain why the city has us in this sublease? Why don't they just have us lease a smaller portion and then they lease it directly? Why is it?
I can't explain that. I don't know. I'm sorry. Wish I had answered that question. I could research it and get back to you.
It just seems like we were trying to get out of the leasing business. We don't like to be landlords,
Yeah.
remember?
Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe it's zoned a certain way too, I don't know.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. We'd have to
There's airport property.
approach the city and have them do a survey and a boundary line adjustment. We've done that work, just to define the dimensions of the parcel itself. With the rest of it filing, with the county, and I don't know if they would, honestly, I don't know. I don't know what path that they would follow.
We might lose.
we might lose our good discount.
Yeah,
Right.
it's kind of a perk. in a way.
And access to the pumps
Right,
on our property.
which is.
Huge.
And how long is our,
From
How
the
long is our lease?
This lease, it expires in 2027.
but for us with the city for the bus barn, is that
We've
also
got another-
27?
14 years.
By then.
What the attorneys call the master lease. That's 18 years in duration, but we've been there for 6 years on a 20-year renewal.
Good topic, we all asked a question.
Do our student advisors have any questions about our sublease?
I don't know.
Like,
I was just happy to hear that there will be, I wrote it down where the agreement will. I think you said the agreement will call for replacement of that.
This whole facility will be replaced.
Great.
I'd love to hear it.
And it'll update the leak detection systems in it. And, replacing that piping that's underground is always a good idea.
Yeah.
They have a leak detection system in there right now, but it's not current as far as the latest technology.
And you mentioned, Brian, that this is gonna happen in 2024,
That's the target for Petrocard that they told me.
next time.
and is that it all coincide with summer vacation, so our
Yes.
use.
I've told them that we need to maintain access to the school year to. That's
Yeah.
But we'll have to have a backup. We've learned a lot about construction.
Brian's gonna be filling up the gas.
Yeah, we did a truck.
Yeah, maybe.
Thank you.
Okay,
Any further questions? Now I get to ask for public comment 3 times. Are there any questions or comments from audience members regarding this topic? If so, please raise your hand. Are there any questions or comments from audience members regarding this topic? If so, please raise your hand. If there are any questions or comments from audience members regarding this topic, please raise your hand. Since there are no questions, I declare the public hearing closed. And then approval of the temporary easement and fueling facility agreement is on the agenda tonight under new business. Next up, we'll have our consent agenda, which consists of our superintendent's annual report, our personnel report, non-represented classified salary schedule, warrants, adjusted warrants, outdoor schools, Washington grant approval, Washington State Archives grant, overnight field trip request for 5th graders to camp, our Snohomish County Human Services ECAP contract, Agile Minds license agreement, American Red Cross agreement, Everett Community College, college and high school agreement, mental health counselors renewal, and a revised 23-24 calendar. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, or is there anything anyone would like to pull for further discussion?
Can I just ask what the Agile Mind holding? was?
Math.
What
Textbook, online, something?
Yes.
Yes.
Algebra, intensified algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. That's all going on to Agile Mind, or they're all already there?
Oh, renewing.
Oh, okay,
Good question.
all right.
We used our agile minds to discuss. Any motion to approve our consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Madam Clerk. Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque. Aye. Director Nill. Aye. Thank you. The consent agenda is adopted. Approved, whatever. And next up is our new business portion of our meeting. We'll start with our 23-24. Gotta get used to that.
Yeah.
Interscholastic activities report.
Thank you, Brenda. On that. So this is attached to your board paper. We're showing it right up here. We do this every year, just to outline what is available at each of the schools for interscholastic activities. I will note for Arlington High School, it's pretty much the same, except you scroll down to the bottom. The unified sports have been added. So that's the basketball and the soccer. So it's a pretty neat addition. Yes,
So I'm a retired Navy guy
yes.
and I'm unfamiliar with the nearest Air Force base. But I am familiar with the nearest Navy bases and I'm wondering why we have an Air Force JROTC. Given the proximity to the bases and not a Navy JROTC.
So it is a good question. It's something that, so the connection or the agreement they have with the Air Force has been forever, so why that was in the very, very beginning. I'm not sure. I don't even know if the Navy has a program like this.
They do nationally, nationally. I don't know if they do regionally.
Because I know that even with what we have with the JORTC with the Air Force, it's very prescriptive. You have to have so many students, which we were at risk at one point. We have to have 100 students. We have to have 2 instructors. It's very robust and we have to follow those rules. Now, I can't tell you the why, but it's a good question. But it's something that's been in place for a long time. And I don't know anybody here that's been here longer than, everybody's, where's Ed?
We're all kind of,
Yeah, where is Ed?
yeah.
Ed might not know either, but Eric DeYoung, do you know why, you've been here probably longer than.
Why it was Air Force?
Right, did they, when you were here in earlier years, did they talk about the Navy, Air Force?
I don't specifically remember. I don't remember Navy ever being in the conversations. I think Air Force approached us with the program. This is how I understood it. Whether it was a local, the school district had a Air Force one that that would be interested in, I saw it and wanted to somehow got connected with.
Just curious.
Yeah, I
Seems
don't-
logical that it would be a Navy. not
There's
a-
a lot of water here.
As an Air Force veteran, I don't understand.
I didn't expect you to.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay, so
Yeah, so, yeah, right.
so that was
Just
good,
kidding.
because I don't know the reason why, I just know that we have that opportunity, but you know, it's. More opportunities, I don't even know if it's, what the rule would be is, can you have two on the same campus, I'm not sure, if it's
Yeah.
worthy of checking it out. But anyway, I was talking about the unified sports activities, which is awesome, so if you did not go to any of those last year, you absolutely need to go.
What kind of, it is boys, girls, what mixed?
Well, it's
ability?
mixed, it's mixed, so I was able to go to the basketball, all of the games for the basketball, it was just incredible.
Now, are these,
And the gym was packed. I know Marilyn
Wow.
can speak that, it was awesome.
and these are students who are not on the other teams, is that correct? We don't have JV and.
Oh,
varsity.
there's a mixture, so it's students that have, you know, they have been, I'd say half and half, it's kind of a mixture of half and half. And some have individual IEPs, you know, where they have some special needs, but the other half are those that want to support them. So they play together,
Nice.
and it's a mixture.
Did we show them on the videos last year? I don't remember that.
Might have-
Maybe we could highlight that a little bit. I'd like to,
Yeah, it's.
I remember
it's
talking
really
about
good.
it.
Yeah. Nathan, you shook your head. What do you know about the unified sports?
Oh, I just went to a couple of games last year. They're very enjoyable. It's a great way for our community to kind of come together.
Yeah. What about you, Mariska?
I wish I could have gone, but I either had other commitments, or I know the one in spring, one of the big soccer games fell on the same day as one of our cabaret activities. I can't remember if it was a performance or not, but I hope to go to at least one from each sport this next year.
I would say the word was inspiring. You walk out of there inspired. So anyway, so that's at Arlington High School, and then at the in Weston, just to know, Weston High School can join these sports activities. They still have to, they have to qualify, they still have to go through a process, but they are welcome to participate. The middle schools, we have these activities. Howler's listed theirs with their club type activities that are going on there. And I think the new thing that's been added this year for Howler is the math Olympiad, I think. Next is Post. Now, Post did note, they wanted me to share that, like, for example, the first robotics and the Lego League, those are depending on interest. So it's not like it just happens, we have to have an interest from the students as
Right.
well, that makes sense. And then there has to be a staff member that's willing to be the supervisor.
Do we have one who's qualified to teach that?
First robotics, absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely. You know, Post has had a pretty strong STEM program, you know, over the years. So I've actually been there and seen the robotics that they have built at Post. So pretty cool. So then moving on, is there any other down below? We've got the schools of choice. So it shows right here. So both Weston and Stilla Valley and homeschool students as well can join with those activities at their resident schools, whatever their home school is, they may join on those activities. And it shows that Weston has the HOSA club, you know, CTV club. So those are the activities, and we just want to keep the board informed, and these are very important for our students, and we want to keep adding, so there's more choices. That's what I have.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Next up, we have our highlights of our summer programs 22-23. And we'd like to welcome Carl Olson, our Director of Categorical Programs, and Marilee Herman, our Principal at Arlington High School. Welcome. Good evening.
Good evening, I'm Carl Olson, Director of Categorical Programs.
And Marilee Herman, the principal at Arlington High School, and I run secondary summer school every summer. I do.
All right, we're going to share with you about some of the opportunities that we did over the summer. We're going to be starting with the Cool Bus. I'm sure all of you were out visiting the Cool Bus, right? So the cool bus, this is our, oh my gosh, sixth, seventh year that we've had a bus going around the neighborhoods. Last year, we merged both the reading and the math supports into one service, so the kids could go on the bus. We had level books, we had people there to check them out. And then on the outside, as you'll see in the picture soon here, they were playing math games, and so we'll share a little bit about that. So here's a good example. The weather was wonderful all summer. We never had to cancel because of heat. And so each elementary school, plus we had one more stop, was represented. So we would start at Eagle Creek, go to President's, we would go to the Timbers Apartments, and then off to kind of near Cemetery Road, and then wrap it up at a park up in Crown Ridge. And so this is Heather Jones, who has been really one of our leaders amongst a wonderful staff team who've been doing this for a number of years. And there she is playing math games, and you can kind of see in the back, there's probably people lining up to help us. One of the great parts that we saw was the parents coming with their kids, and instead of hanging back, we frequently find them watching what the kids were doing, asking what was being used, and then collecting those resources, ordering it themselves, and doing those activities at home. And when we figure we had on average about 70 to 90 kids each Wednesday. Over the 7 to 8 Wednesdays we did this, and then you add the parents there also. It really did meet kind of a nice need, a nice gathering point. This here is at the park at Crown Ridge. That tended to be one of the favorite spots where, as the bus is pulling up, you see families just all coming out and coming to pick up their books, play games, get resources. So we really had kind of a dual role there where parents can keep going at home.
Quick question, Carl, can you remind me, did we offer a summer school program? Like, did we offer things at the schools in addition to the bus?
No,
Okay,
other than for the high school.
and then the high school, okay. As I know in Lakewood, we offer the program, there wasn't enough, actually, we had trouble with staffing to do it for 6 weeks, so I think they offered it for 3. But I would love to weigh which is either engagement or participation. That'd be kind of neat. I'd be curious if you're able to get any data on what maybe surround any other schools, or if you knew that.
I'll be able to share that with you actually, because we're going to be looking at some data from one program, but I'm going to compare it with that program.
Great,
So I
thanks.
do have that.
So are these people coming out to the bus because you're handing out freebies or because you're offering education? What's actually happening when these people are coming out to the bus?
Both. When they come out there, I would say the freebies, they're checking out books. They're not getting freebies. So part of it is getting the expertise on what to check out, what was their level, working on, okay, selecting one, but also since we have teachers and then someone who is bilingual with Spanish and English on there, really directing them to what to take home. We also,
Is it focused on the following year or is it making up for the past year?
it's focusing more on where they're at.
Okay.
So a good example is we had a number of resources for some particular families that were directed at their reading level, but then also had a QR code that a family member could print that, click on that, with their phone, and it will take them to a lesson related to that book. We didn't have as many parents come out for those as had signed up. And when we talk about literacy camp, it will mirror that, where we had 82 parents say they would be there collecting these resources. We had about 4 or 5 come and get them. Even though we were sitting on a bus at Howard Middle School to pass them out. So we're going to be using those throughout the school year and sending home, because it does offer actual educational lessons for both the child and the parents to how to increase reading skills at home. So yeah, and then the math games definitely was, here's a fun way to learn math and to compare numbers, to add numbers, mental math, geometry, things like that.
That midsummer refresher is pretty important. I know for my kids, it certainly is, because they start to forget,
Exactly.
right?
Just keeping the brain engaged is huge.
Yeah.
Right, go to the next slide. So there's, up to 80 students check out books and play math games each Wednesday. And so again, it was keeping them reading. We did have a high percentage of people coming every week or every other week. So there were definitely some core families who were frequent. And so when you think about checking out 3 books a week and bringing them back and getting more, right at the beginning, we had kids and families sign up for books that they didn't see, so we could order them and have them ready the next week. So we were trying as much as possible just to, like you said, keep that going. And knowing that this ran from the end of June to mid-August, it keeps it going for a long time. So we were very encouraged, where actually one of our strongest days was the second to the last session. So it wasn't like it just kind of whittled out. So that was very encouraging for us. Okay, data. This will go to your question. I did want to come back with, first of all, some follow-up data regarding a program we did 2 years ago that both Marilee and I are hoping to continue and find funding for the next year, because funding was a big driver with both that and literacy camp. Now, with the 8th to 9th grade transition program that we did, which was a 3-week, 5-day-a-week program every morning, we had a small group for this, but out of 13 students that remained at Arlington High School, one of the encouraging factors when I looked at both first quarter and semester, so I wanted to see just that first half of the year sustaining, knowing that all these kids had some sort of at-risk, qualifier or were recommended to keep that going. And as you can see, with the average GPA for this group was a semester of 2.65. The average Fs for all the kids, all the classes was at first quarter 0.62 Fs, a kid semester 0.25. So very few Fs, which I know is particularly important. Discipline average 2.23 incidents per kid. Most of these were listed as cell phone, attendance related discipline. When we looked at the kids, there might have been one kid who had a lot, everything else was extremely minimal. So they were also kind of holding that together. Many kids were engaged in activities, in sports, in dramas. And then attendance, we had a very large range, and mainly it was 1 or 2 kids that missed a lot. As a whole, in that first semester, 9 students had less than 6 tardies or absences combined, which really is quite strong. I mean, you would know more in the comparison, but
That's very strong. And, it's something to note too, is a kid is not considered off track for graduation if they're only a 0.5 credit behind, right? And so with what we're looking at with Fs, that's not considered off track for graduation if you're a 0.5. And our one with a lot of discipline incidences, I might have taken on intentionally to try and make those connections. So maybe not recommended for summer school, but that was kind of, somebody really wanted to get in there and make some connections. So it's not, that part's not surprising, but the connection was definitely there. And these are kids too that Mr. Axelson and I had deeper connections with, and it started right here. It started with that piece, and they're kids, like Mr. Olson mentioned, that have some of those trauma indicators in the past. And so having that, like making Arlington High School a home where they keep coming back, as noted by their attendance, right, is the huge piece to getting them to be successful as they move on and see a different pathway.
so it was very encouraging, definitely a program we'd like to expand further, but also a program we want to bring back. And so that's partly why I took this data. Again, the attendance part, when we consider what a big priority that is for us right now, that alone for our at-risk kids is very, very encouraging. And talking with some of these kids throughout the year, they did seem engaged. Talking to a couple of parents at different times, they talked about what a great year. It's the whole thing, but also knowing that they had that jump start. They were familiar with the building. One of the teachers purposely did algebra math activities that required the kids to go all over the building to learn where they were and become familiar, maybe a little too familiar at times.
Maybe. One of them was given, one of the kids was giving his buddies a tour during freshman day because he'd already been in the building so much, so he's walking them around. So that part's pretty cool. And the 8th and 9th grade transition program is designed around English and math skills that we see them lacking as they come into 9th grade, where it's really a struggle. And it's very much PBL design. So you're doing project-based learning. So they're working on some sort of project, usually something like the year before this one, it was all about the food truck. and designing stuff for the food truck and setting stuff up, that we raised money for. And then this one, I can't remember
A
exactly.
lot of our focus with this one was around the theme of hope
Yes.
and working with some of that material that Carrie Hogeson had been delivering. So very encouraging. I will tell you with literacy camp, not as encouraging. And it's something we had talked about, where what I looked at with data was the goal, like you said, is to avoid the summer slide. We actually found out of over 200 kids that signed up for that year, maybe 120 made it more than 3 times. We had parents scheduling camp on top of camp. And as you said, it was so hard to get staff. And then to find out that the staff we had was more than we needed because of that. But at that point, you're stuck. In terms of the summer slide, we found no wonderful connection between whether they went or they didn't. The data showed that in some cases, and I looked at students who qualified for remedial services, because those were the students that were invited to this. When I compared students with remedial services who didn't go, compared with the students who did, the students who didn't go actually had less of a summer slide overall. That can be for many reasons. Maybe their parents were doing more consistent things at home. This program was 2 mornings a week for 4 weeks. Then you have a whole month and a half off. So there could be lots of reasons as I dug into the data. But that was it was discouraging. And I'll tell you, that was the first time in the years of that program we had dug into data. So that's only 1 year. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Based on the social emotional needs and things like that, but also it was a pretty big spend for that kind of gain. Where as we look to the future and look at a lot of the needs of our kids, especially with the focus of the transition year, you know, right away, a program like this showed some very encouraging information. Basically, these were kids that were at risk of eventually dropping out for whatever reason. And that was good news.
What about a program for 5th going into 6th? I know Mary Lee's really ambitious about that 9th grade, and that's a pivotal time, being an indicator for graduation. I'm just wondering, I would think for myself, I know I was very trepidatious about middle school. It just felt like a big unknown, and I wonder if that might be a different way to apply our resources. I'm not saying to take away the bus, but
Yeah.
certainly something to think about. And what when you're done, what is your cost? What was the outlay for this summer? I guess both programs. So you have the school bus and then you have Mary Lee's program at the high school.
School bus total, including supplies and everything, was about 20,000.
Okay.
We worked on a budget for this one. It was about 20,000 as we did it here. We worked out a budget. We could have brought it down around 12, 13. Literacy camp is more in your 35 to 45,000 range. So
Wow, okay.
definitely a bigger cost in terms of that.
And none of that, nothing grants. Nothing.
We actually paid for it out of grants, so it was because with the grants, we would have been looking at having to reduce staff that are here supporting kids all year
Gotcha.
in order to do the program. So we wanted to solidify that and make sure we have those programs, because when I look at the data, for instance, for our remedial programs, and I look at it by grade level at each school, we have a high majority making more than a year's growth on average with those programs.
Yeah.
So we have some good data to support that too.
Good.
Any other questions?
All right, was it- go to the next section. There we go. All right, no cutesy fancy pictures. Sorry, you want to see cutesy fancy, you gotta show up at my school. So this down, first football game Friday versus Kamiak.
Oh, this Friday?
This
Friday.
Friday.
Oh, my
Unfortunately, this Friday.
Fourth.
Band's already been there.
I might have to go check out the band.
The band has been doing really well, I must say. I've been liking every single post they've been putting out, and the band teacher has been doing a fantastic
Pretty
job.
stoked about having
Yeah.
there on that one. So anyway, please come, guys. It'll be great. All right, so here's my numbers. Get your notes ready. Okay, right now, Arlington High School is at 1717. That's our big number right now, with more coming into the portal every day. So when you ask me how much we spend on this program, I don't know until Gina gives me some numbers. We are like running as fast as we can at Arlington High School with enrolling kids. So okay, I put a lot of this data together. Oh, that was simple. Because my people were so busy. I was like, it's fine, I won't ask, it's good. Okay, so summer school, I had 100 kids enroll for summer school this year. I had 94 complete their classes. Okay, the 6 that did not, 5 were withdrawals, so maybe they didn't show up at all, you know, something like that. And I had 1 discipline removal. Whoopsie. Okay, so of those, we only had 1 8th grader enroll this year. Okay, and 8th graders can only enroll to do health as an advancement piece. So that's a little bit down. I had 20 9th graders. So this is really where last year. I had 34 10th graders. I had 35 11th graders, and I had 10 12th graders. So these are people that are finishing their diplomas, right? And are now getting those diplomas. They might be coming in as a 5th year senior, you know, something along those lines, or they might just have a semester left when they come in. So that's where we were looking at. In terms of summer school, just to kind of refresh your memory, we use Apex, prescriptive Apex for credit retrieval. So if the kid has attempted the class before, they'll come back in and take it, and they can essentially test out of different units. So maybe it doesn't take them the full 4 weeks to complete it. They may do it faster. Now, let's say you failed your ag science class and you stuck to this spell right here. Take that with me. So let's say you failed your ag science class. We don't have something comparable on Apex. So you would be in a credit advancement, right? You essentially have to do the full course. We have 5 content area specialists. So I have an English, math, science, social studies. My other big subject. Social studies. Yeah, no, that's it. I went down to teacher this year. I saved this money. That's right. That's what I did. So we used to run a credit advancement teacher as well. This year, all of the teachers that were hired took on extra course loads. So we were able to save a full teacher position. So we ran it with our teachers. I have 1 para for support, and I cannot tell you how many kids would not have made it through if she had not been right there. Like, very much so. We changed our policy this year, so no cell phones are allowed in Apex classrooms, because the program is not infallible, as we know. Okay, and that's actually changing my whole building policy around Apex this year. I'll learn some good.
So are cell phones allowed in other classes?
Okay, so Arlington High School's policy with cell phones is no cell phones during instructional time unless the teacher specifically asks for them.
So that means they're off or just in a backpack?
In a backpack.
Just curious, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Yep. And then, let's see. Okay, so in terms of numbers, of those 100 kids down to 94, right? I had 199 courses that kids were enrolled in. Of those 199, 171 were completed. So that's 171, divide that in half, that's how many credits we retrieved. It's all just a half credit a piece. Okay, and several kids did multiple classes, right? Okay, so as it stands right now, without summer school numbers, right? Because we have not had time to process this stuff, right? My incoming 10th graders are 84.4% on track for graduation. My incoming 11th graders, 84.7% on track for graduation, and my incoming seniors, 82% on track for graduation. Okay, so it'll be a little bit higher once our summer school numbers get in there. And a couple other things, backfilling credit, just want to go back. That was specifically a COVID policy. If we remember that, right? That is no longer an option for our students, nor is the waivers around their core credits. But mastery-based credit continues. That is a district policy. So that one continues. So we continue to use that as we go forward with getting kids prepped and ready for graduation and caught up and all those different things. We ran a sliding fee scale for students this year. Summer school for the last 2 years has been free. It has been quite huge with very little investment from kids. So a lot of enrollees and a lot of non-completers. I don't feel like coming. I'm telling my parents I'm coming and I'm walking out the back doors. Okay, we did not have that this year. So $200 per half credit. Okay, $100 if you were on, well, depending on where you're at, $100 sliding scale down to 25. Okay, so three kind of thing there. The investment piece is pretty huge. Even if you're investing $25, you've invested. So, all right, questions on Arlington High School Summer School?
Good job.
Hey, come visit anytime. My fingers don't wear shoes the entire time. It's good times. Yeah, pretty chill. Get some credits done.
I like the idea. I think we had a school, let's see, who was it? No, I was thinking of the booster club. We had someone I was with there and she was always a believer in kind of meeting the challenge, you know, showing up and being invested. And I like that idea. I think that we can offer a sliding scale, but it does have that accountability piece to it. So
Yeah, I spent a lot less time chasing kids that left campus because they didn't at this time, so. It was good, it was very positive. 171 courses completed, yeah, it's a lot. Pretty
That's
stoked with
amazing.
that. So, and if we think pre-COVID numbers, I was usually running about 120, 130 in summer school, so hitting 100, I feel like we're getting back to our numbers. The last 2 years were massive because it was free, but I wouldn't say we were more successful because of that at all. So, I said a lot that showed up or, you know, didn't complete or just given out. Yeah. Okay, other thoughts? Yeah. We just finished 459 freshman home visits.
Yes.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a lot of freshmen.
Oh, yeah, we've been driving. It's a big class. Big class, yeah. We did it. It's all done.
Thank you for that. That's awesome.
All right.
Great. If there's no other questions. Thank you very much for the presentation and the update. Look forward to hearing about how it continues. Next up is our resolution 2309, temporary easement and fueling facility agreement with Petrocard that we heard about 20 minutes ago. Madam Clerk, do you want to pull that up on the screen? And Brian Lewis, would you like to come up again? We'd like to invite you back.
Okay.
This is the action part of this item.
Can say a few words. So again, this resolution authorizes the district to engage in the sublease arrangement with Petrocard by declaring a portion of the leased property as surplus and allowing us to sublease that property, and then establishing a fuel supply agreement between us and Petrocard as well.
This is an action item. Do we have a motion to approve resolution 2309 temporary easement and fueling facility agreement with Petrocard Incorporated?
Make a motion, we approve resolution 2309.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 2309 temporary easement and fueling facility agreement with Petrocard. Madam Clerk.
Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director King.
Aye.
President Novak.
Aye.
Director Now.
Aye.
Thank you. The resolution is passed. Thank you, Brian. Next up, we have resolution 2310 authorizing transfer funds from capital project funds to general fund. And we'd like to welcome Gina Zupenhorst, our Executive Director of Financial Services.
Good evening, good to see you. I have a resolution for you, and this is in regards to a transfer of funds from the Capital Projects Fund to the General Fund. Not a large dollar amount, it only is about $2,589, but nevertheless, there's a little bit of background around that and why we have to do this by action of the board, specifically separately. So the district, this has to do with capital projects, so the district installed security cameras at all of our schools, and we used capital levy funds for that. But part of that involved purchasing video health service contracts that went along with that. And those would be to cover the software updates or training, technical support, licensing, diagnostics, repairs, offsite storage, all of those kinds of things that go along with it. And that's for a period of about 5 years, you would be doing those agreements. The expenses for the first 12 months for those service contracts are able to be paid for out of the capital projects fund. But beyond that, the expenses for future years, beyond the first 12 months, they're eligible for continued support from the capital projects fund, but you have to pay it out of the general fund first, and then you have to transfer money from the capital projects to the general fund. So it's a bit of administrative paperwork that goes along with that, but that's what this resolution is all about. And so we have to do it by interfund transfer. There's specific RCWs that are called out in there that specifically define that as to how it's allowed and what restricted purposes or restricted funding sources within capital projects that can be used for this purpose. So that's what the resolution is about. And do you have any questions?
That was a great explanation. If there's no questions, do we have a motion to approve the resolution 2310 authorizing transfer funds from capital projects fund to general fund.
I move that we approve the resolution 2310 authorizing transfer of funds from capital project funds to general fund.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 2310 authorizing transfer funds from capital projects fund to general fund. Madam Clerk, can we vote?
Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kelly.
I,
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye.
Director Now.
Thank you. Thanks for getting that done quickly before the 22-23 year ended. We're still in it. Yep. All right, next up, this is the most exciting part. I know you've been really excited about this part. Brian, we'd like to welcome you to talk about the EPNO bond and capital levy. And I know you brought a friend.
I did.
Thank you for bringing a friend.
Sure.
And I heard there's no quiz.
Until February. Okay, so, good evening again. Brian Lewis, Executive Director of Operations. Joining me tonight is Mr. Corey Flager, Managing Director of DA Davidson Company. Corey is the representative for DA Davidson, with whom we've had a long-standing relationship in terms of consultation on these kinds of financing issues that resulted from elections. DA Davidson consulted with us when we did a non-voted debt associated with the 2020 capital levy that helped us accelerate the receipt of levy funds and get started on projects right away, rather than waiting for levy funds to come in over time. So they've done a great service to us. They're very reasonably priced. I want to be clear tonight that we're going to be talking about the EPNO levy, the capital levy, and a bond, potential bond question as well. And want to make sure that you know that I may be representing the capital levy and bond component, but Gina Zutenhorst is the lead on the EPNO. She's not going to necessarily be speaking tonight unless there's a question, but she is definitely a part of this team. So we have two current levies, both expire at the end of calendar year 2024. One is the EPNO, the Educational Programs and Operations Levy. Shorthand, we refer to it as EPNO, and it used to be called across the state. It may still be. I haven't heard this terminology in a while, but it was referred to as the Maintenance and Operations Levy. The maintenance component of that term referred to the maintenance of the educational program, not necessarily building that the educational services are delivered in. So to really clarify what the purpose of it was, we changed our description of it. I believe it was 2022, the educational programs and operations levy. We also have a capital levy that expires at the end of 2024. It'll be the fourth year of collection. It will be the end of that levy. You're going to see some numbers tonight associated with the capital levy, but I just want to make sure that it's $1.50 per thousand that you'll see in the slides. That's for discussion purposes only. That is not the recommendation at this point in time. It's really to assign a reference point in what would be collected and what it would cost to have that level of levy.
Is $1.50 the maximum for that?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I believe we're $2.50.
And I'm not saying that.
Okay. That's the maximum. At a prior meeting, I brought to you the recommendation from the Facilities Advisory Committee to the superintendent to replace Post Middle School via bond funding. Study by the committee about the future of the facilities at SVLC and Weston High School. How could they better serve the students that are at those places or in those programs? And then three different options for continuation of the capital levy to continue the momentum that we've achieved in terms of improving our buildings. The next steps include tonight's presentation from Corey regarding property tax related issues. October 9th, any discussions that may come from these presentations, and we can, or if we've got any changes that we'd like to make to both EPNO and the facilities request, we'll present those to you on October 9th. October 23rd, we will bring draft ballot or resolutions for ballot questions to you. And then the next milestone is February 13th, 2024 is election day. The district does have to adopt resolutions by December 15th of 2023 to appear on the February ballot. We're going to bring these to you earlier than that, so if you so choose, you can adopt those resolutions right here. So without further ado, quickly.
Brian, good evening. My name is Corey Plager. As Brian mentioned, I've been supporting the school with construction finance for about the last 6 years. Prior to that, I worked for 15 years at the Educational Service District in school finance as well with budgets and apportionment, payroll, etc. D.A. Davidson was founded in the Great Northwest, Great Falls, Montana. That's where you're gonna see some bison on some slides. And we have 13 offices in Washington, 2 major offices, one in Spokane and Seattle, which I split time. I've been grateful to work with Gina, Brian, and Dr. Sweeting on this issue. And what my goal is to provide some factual data first. This will work. Here we go. We're gonna do a quick levy and bond overview. It's been a few years since you've had to dig into this really deeply. I know the levy is, always in discussion annually, but the actual replacement of this levy every 4 years. So I'm gonna share some factual data. Then I'm gonna talk a little bit more about a bond financing. Should that be something that the board is gonna consider? What are the basics of a bond plan? And then I have some projections. And as Brian mentioned, working with Brian and Gina on these, a lot of these are just for visual perspectives. You can see what would this equal. Then the board can use that as almost like a bookend to see if this is that too much, too little. Then at the very end, I have some other considerations should there be enough time. I think the question came up just a moment ago about what is your levy lid? So I put this slide together. This is kind of like an elevator speech if you had to share it with somebody, one of your neighbors. EP&O levies, formerly M&Os. I think one of the rebranding focuses was also because so many schools like Arlington pass capital levies. You have a capital levy and a maintenance levy. They sound very similar. So I think the rebranding to education programs makes sense because the state wants this to be an enrichment levy, extracurricular and above and beyond. However, we know that this levy is really dedicated for the most part to fund things that the state isn't funding. It could be janitorial, curriculum, electricity, school nurses, special ed, you name it. You are subject to the levy lid laws. You get the lesser of a formula. Anytime there's a lesser formula, some schools are getting more than other schools, as we've known. We'd love a greater than formula, but right now you just shifted last year from a $2.50 district to a per pupil district. So now the formula becomes a little easier. You count up your students and you times it by 2,988. And that is now your levy lid. Just as a refresher, your levy currently is 9.5 million. Your levy lid this year is 17 million. So something to share with the community as they're concerned about taxes. As mentioned that we are not at the levy lid and something to consider as you think about refreshing and replacing this levy. Some good news, levies are simple majority. The general fund, capital, and any bus levies are simple majority, and there's no validation. It does not matter how many people show up. You'd love a great representation, but it doesn't matter for the purposes of the county. And these are based on the calendar year, not the fiscal year. So Gina has fun trying to mix the calendar year levy with a fiscal year school budget. And you have 2 attempts in a 12-month period. I'll show you some successful statistics on what months would be best at the very end. A refresher on the capital levy, no dollar limit, whatever you can desire, right? Within reason, within logic of what the voters would support. But unlike the EP&O where it's $2.50 or per pupil amount, no dollar limit. Seattle, I believe, passed a $1.6 billion capital levy. And they're able to build schools with the capital levy and they don't need bonds. You can also go up to 6 years, unlike the EP&O, which is 4 years. It was a little mismatch, but many school districts just align them. If they are to do a capital levy and an EP&O levy, they tend to align them so that they can refresh them together. The most common use is technology, safety, security, roof, HVAC, nothing too exorbitant. And some people use it to jumpstart a long-range plan. You know, you're looking at, okay, are we ready for a bond? Well, let's work on capital levy. Let's fix some roofs. Let's fix some parking lots before we get ready for the big plan. So sometimes these have been a step for that.
Corey, quick question.
Yeah.
So what you just said to me just kind of made some bells go off. For Seattle, if they are funding schools with a levy, why would you go to a bond if you,
Then they don't. They haven't issued a bond in quite a few years.
no, what's the timeline on paying that back?
Right, and so what happens is with the capital levy, much like your EP&O levy, taxpayers pay in spring and the fall, like as part of their mortgage.
Right,
And they'll just accrue a very large amount in the spring or fall, and they'll
Okay.
have enough in the bank to write checks to construction firms to just pay the bills for school construction.
okay,
So most schools will issue a bond, let's say for 40 million for
Right.
elementary school, they'll issue it up front, and then the taxpayers will pay it back over 20 years.
right,
Seattle will collect maybe that much in a spring collection.
but that's because it's Seattle,
Exactly, their tax base is so large, right?
Okay.
Amazon,
so we don't have, okay, so
their tax
that's
base is pretty good, but it's not.
not Seattle,
Exactly.
okay, so that's the part that separates us.
Exactly, and so, yeah, there are some equity issues across the state when our systems are based on tax base.
Right,
Some schools have a small geography and some have a huge geography, and that plays a role as well. So there's many factors.
yeah, okay, that clears it up.
And a little note that's not in this presentation, the state is currently being sued because of our capital funding of educational facilities. So that's something we keep our eye on as well. The last slide on the overview is unlimited tax general obligation bonds, UTGO bonds. If you look around, whether it's a library, a city park, or a county fire department, most of them are funded by a municipal bond of some manner. There's certain things like in Oak Harbor, you might find a federal base that is built by federal funds, but for the most part, if a school is doing construction, it's through a bond. And you cannot ask for whatever you'd like, 5% of your tax base is your capacity, less outstanding debt. You could currently sell 380 million in bonds right now. We know that's a challenge, right, as well. What would be the tax rate there? But that's your ceiling. Most bonds are tax exempt, so you can borrow at rates that Microsoft and Amazon can't borrow as they're building facilities, and your bondholders are repaid with property taxes. The biggest challenge, I have a map here that I built because I love maps. And I think this helps communicate the message here. Our state is a 60% supermajority state and has been, as OSPI reported, since World War II. And we are just like West Virginia, Alabama, the Dakotas. So other states that don't have maybe the educational performance that we have, and we're one of the only on either coast that's still 60%. California, at the time that I built this map, was at 55%. I believe they just recently passed a model to put them to 50% as well. I think some people have been in favor of doing a 55% model that is not quite all the way to simple majority, knowing that these facility improvements are large and span a long period of time. But there hasn't been a lot of agreement across the state by superintendents or school boards what direction to take in Olympia. And I think that's why it's stalled and is still at 60% today. Here's the history of Arlington School District, color coded in green by your EP&O levies and previously M&O or school program levies. And in gray, your school bonds, and in tan, your capital levy. What you'll notice is over the last decade, your EP&O levies have done excellent. In 2020, we had a significant decrease in support across the state. You were deemed fully funded in all the newspapers when McCleary was passed. And at that time, state taxes increased and you were limited locally. And you saw 56.1%, some of your higher numbers. Areas in the Seattle, King County area all struggled. And so that was an excellent output. And to pass a capital levy, the first one on the first try, also kudos to the district there. It has been a little bit more difficult since 2018. What is your tax rate currently? You'll notice I kept these same colors in green, your EP&O levy. If I look today, you're at $1.21. I put a note on the corner, the voters approved $1.70. Well, why is that so different? The district makes assumptions at the time they go to the voters, and they're usually conservative assumptions. And when property values skyrocket, the tax rate falls. Just because property values increase does not mean the district leadership team can ask for more. You have to wait until your next replacement levy to consider that. The capital levy, I believe, was passed at $1.15. I remember $1.15 as well. So today, if the estimates were perfect, you would be at a $2.85 tax rate. You're actually at $2.
Can you explain that a little bit more about how when property values go up, the amount we're paying the schools goes down, because that seems confusing.
Right, it is. So let's take the board, for example, there's 5 of you, and all of your property values go up 20%. But then we also see Amazon move in, or we also see major growth, new neighborhoods, and a sixth person just sat down. While your property values all went up, there's more people paying taxes. And the amount stayed the same from the prior year. What the voters approved it remained unchanged. So while all your values went up, if there wasn't that new home, you all are the same percentage of the pie. Your values all just went up, but you're still the same percentage of the taxpayers. So you've had as new people move in, and the amount of the levy hasn't grown with the property inflation. So tax rates are plummeting in almost every school district where property values are booming. So it isn't easy. It's
We're not locked into a certain rate.
correct. It would be very convenient if we were. Voters vote on $1.70. And then you could continue to collect that as your base grows. As Amazon moves in, they'll help pay. But what they're doing right now is helping offset other people's taxes right now.
But that's only because of the limit on the time, right? I mean, we were locked into it this time. Yeah, but as those become available again, then we've added more people to the pool.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because well, I'm assuming school districts are like other taxing entities where you could word your issue to increase with whatever percentage rate you're allowed to keep up to that maximum. So in essence, if I'm at, in theory, if we wanted to do 170 or 250, whatever, we could keep up with that every year and collect more and more money, keeping that tax rate at 170 if we worded it that way. Is that a
Correct. What that would take would be the district to forecast more aggressively on growth. And at the time, 28% growth was never in our wildest dreams heading into a pandemic. So we will see like 5 to 10% be really, common values that a school would consider. And then you went up by 30%. So yes, you could put robust growth and manage it that way and scale it back, but you can't go up. So
right?
some districts are very aggressive with growth. Now we're starting to come into, and I'll show a slide coming up. We're about to go negative with property values. I think there's so much growth and now there's a tempering as
Mortgage rates.
Exactly. But I think the takeaway here, there's a couple visuals on this slide. As you can see, when the bond matures in 2020, and it was replaced in brown by a capital projects levy at a very similar rate. So that's where the district was able to take care of some much needed maintenance and improvements. And that you're at $2 today, but you requested the voters to support $2.85. Something to keep in the back of your mind as you're considering what to do next. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what does go into a bond plan. So I'm going to share you some projections, but I want to show you just the 4 things that go into the bond plan somewhat briefly. Interest rates, of course, your bond rating, your credit score. Just like individuals, as we're purchasing a home, you have a credit score as a school district. Who pays the bills? Your tax base, whether you're Seattle or Arlington or index school district, varying sizes of tax base. Then the structure. I'm going to talk about each one of these a little bit more specifically with some visuals. I'm not sure if you can tell, I'm a visual learner. So I try and put a lot of visuals on these slides. Interest rates are up, but they're not up as much as in other entities because we are tax exempt. You'll notice I'm hovering right around 3.5%. That's about where we are right now. I just bought a Toyota recently and I paid 6.7%. So you can see some of the differences what a municipal bond gathers of a certain rating. No, we're not at 1 or 2.1% that we were during the pandemic, but we're still historically low. So it's not a frustrating period right now for the most part. It just seems that way because it was so low last year. So it has been challenging for refundings. Everything we're about to show you later in a projection includes a significant cushion of 1.5%. For example, while today rates are 3.5, we're going to assume 5% because a lot of time is going to transpire between now and when you might sell a bond, and you don't want to promise something and then have the rate be higher than you promised. So that's a lot of overestimation on interest rates to be protecting you there. The next thing is your rating. You are not currently rated, but when you were a couple of years ago before your bond matured, you were rated a AA3 by Moody's, which is one of the most common ratings, but a very high, it's called very high investment grade credit. You might think that you're towards the middle here, but there's another like 12 ratings below here that I cut off that I want to show you because we didn't have any Washington schools rated that low. Washington is considered very high grade credit. And one of the reasons are we have a state guarantee. which means if you, for any reason, have an emergency and can't pay your principal and interest to investors, the state will pay. It's like having a parent co-sign an apartment as your kid moves out, right? So that is a big influence on these ratings. You may ask as a board between now and a possible bond, what can we do to make sure we have a strong credit rating? 30% of your score is fund balance. And that doesn't make sense. Why do we need a strong general fund balance? Because investors are paid back by taxes. Just how it is with Moody's. They want you to have money in the bank. And so that's one thing that is somewhat under your control for the next few years is managing fund balance. And they want to see 17.5% fund balance, which is a little absurd.
Where did they come up with that?
It's a national trend average based on peers. However, we are funded almost 80% by state resources, 75 to 80%. Other states are almost half local levy. So they're very volatile. Ours is, so we've been explaining to these rating agencies for years, we don't need 17% fund balance. We're just fine with these currently existing fund balances. We do our best to share that with them. There is some flexibility in their rating scores at times. But you were, before your bonds matured, at AA3. Now, we talked about your tax base. I mentioned you were growing by 28%, and now I have a visual on that. This is your tax base since the year 2010. You'll see a decrease. That was the mortgage crisis. That's when we got into trouble, when people were borrowing too much and we had some real estate bubbles burst. But since then, your tax base has quadrupled. You are up 4 times since your low here, and now you're almost to 8 billion. You had a new construction record of 141 million. And I believe that was after you had 82 million for 2 years in a row.
And most of that's commercial growth, right?
There's a lot of commercial growth. They don't really separate out for us unless we have, requests. But you've had 500 million over the last 5 years. That's 6% of your tax base growth in just 5 years. So something to keep in mind as well is how do you manage that growth when it comes to requests for local taxes? So you'll notice this really strong growth, but we're going to use very conservative factors when looking at this bond projection I'm about to show you. We're not going to assume you're going to go by 28% every year. I talked about structure. We've all probably had the discussion of buying a home 30-year versus 15-year, very similar in the bond world. 20 years is the most commonly used bond. Some people go shorter to try and lower the total interest. This can be more expensive on a tax rate over those years. Or you can stretch it longer, pay more interest, but have a lower annual tax rate. We're going to talk about 20 years because that's the sweet spot. Probably a majority of most school districts do 20 years. And it's really accepted by investors. Any questions before I talk about some projections? Great. So we have I'm going to talk about some assumptions before we get into the actual numbers. We're going to assume a February election for the EP&O bond and capital levy information we're about to show. If they're on the bond, we're going to show you, we're going to split into 2 sales. You're not going to do a bond and then sell all at once and have it sit in the bank for a period of time with your treasurer. You're going to sell it as you need it in a couple instances. We're going to use, as I mentioned, today's market rates plus 1.5%. A lot of pundits say we're at the top and we're about to start going down. So this might be a little bit conservative. But look at the assessed valuation growth I'm using, -2% in 2024. You might say, why are you using that when you're just up 28%? This is what the county just shared with Gina and Brian last week. You're down 1.57%
From a year ago.
Which is very shocking. So as you start to get your home statements, you might see where you fall on that spectrum. Are you right along the average of about 2% negative growth, or is your home still growing depending on your neighborhood? So for example, my home value went up 33% last year in Spokane, and this year's down 4%. It's a little frustrating. How about last year? 24% growth, this year is 0.
Well, the bubble's over.
Right, so now we're cruising. I also made an assumption that you're going to continue your EP&O levy at the same rate of $1.50, which we throw out $1.50 or $2.50 because that's when McCleary changed in 2018. That was the limit for a while, and many districts were kind of, stuck with that amount. So I just kind of put this in the model so you can see what that looks like. It's not back to where you asked for at $1.70, but it's not at your current rate of $1.20. So we kind of split it down the middle as we were problem solving. So what would that $1.50 levy look like? This is what you've collected in your EP&O levies for the last few years. So we're kind of setting the stage with this before we talk about your bond. In green, you'll notice an amount collected. If you see a red amount, that means you were either voluntarily not collecting that to meet a promised tax rate to the voters, or in these cases as well, McCleary limited you and your voters approved something that the state said you couldn't collect because they know how to do things. They're going to give you some money. I would argue they might not have given you 7.4 million that you lost locally or 7.4 million last year as well. Some districts got new state money and they had no limits locally because they were already below $1.50. So not everybody was on the same playing field. But you'll notice here you are today at 9.5 million. And you'll notice you have not been that low since 2010. And you all heard of this thing called inflation, right? It's a challenge. So you have one more year to collect. And that's when you usually do schedule your replacement. And this is what it would look like at $1.50 estimate based on conservative AV assumptions. So I just want to kind of show you that visually. You don't get back to where you were before, but you see an increase as well. So this is kind of like just something to consider as you move forward with your leadership team on where does the board want to be? And I'm sure there's gonna be some presentations and communication around this. So we have the Facilities Advisory Committee came forth with these certain projects, and that's what pushed us towards this projected bond amount of 89 million. What would that look like is 75 cents per thousand based on all those assumptions I shared. The district also is looking to continue the capital projects levy at these 3 different amounts collected over 4 years. And here's what those tax rates would be. So what would that projected tax rate change be? That's the most important thing, is what's the difference in whole. We have some moving pieces here. So one thing that I like to look at is if it's 63 cents per thousand, what will that impact be on the average home value of 500,000? So this isn't rate from the county. This is more of this is what it appears to be your averages are right now. But what this means is this package of an EP&O levy at $1.50, a capital levy, these 3 amounts with this bond, it would be $315 per year for this capital levy amount with this bond, $335 at this capital levy amount, and then $480 per year at the larger capital levy with this bond amount. And then we break it out monthly. We don't quite go down to the day, right? That could be, the PDC doesn't love it when you say, look at just a cup of coffee, right? That's a little bit misleading and a little bit, it's not factual.
Monthly is.
I said I'm a visual learner, there's a lot of numbers here, so let me put it in chart form. Here is an $89 million bond with a $1.50 EP&O replacement levy and a $16.5 million capital levy. And you'll notice that the total rate is $275 during that period. So more than it's been the last few years and equal with about 2019, but much lesser than pre-McCleary.
So confirming again, what we would be asking in February is a bond and a capital levy.
And an EP&O replacement at $1.50 on this one.
And an EP&O.
All 3, a trifecta.
We did that last time, and we did not get the winner that we were hoping for.
The trifectas are difficult. There's areas, I believe, like North Shore, Pullman, there's a handful of school districts that do them consistently. But yeah, sometimes it's a little difficult.
Is there, I don't know, would we want to not do a trifecta?
It really comes down to the needs of the district and the CPAC advisory committee's recommendations. I think the data really aligns with the trifecta versus alone. There's not a huge difference,
Okay.
but they have,
asking.
I think there's only been 9 trifecta attempts in the last 5-6 years. And I think half were successful, which is about in line with averages.
And we were successful on 2 of the 3.
I know we were, I was part of that, and it was frustrating because I really wanted a new middle school, but I'm
But it's
committed.
public sentiment. Support a trifecta?
Well, I'll say
I
this.
mean, you poll that kind of thing and bring that into your calculation.
We haven't, since the pandemic, a lot of trends have been kind of thrown out the window, but I'll say this, of the trifecta attempts, each EP&O levy is passed, each capital levy is passed, then bonds have passed half the time. Over the history of bonds, about 45% of bonds pass. And sometimes it takes a couple attempts. So what I'll say is the trifecta, you'll see people get all 3, or they'll get 2 out of the 3.
Yeah.
even in today's mood.
Yeah, the most recent trifecta, I believe, was in 2020. So I'd have to go and double check if there's been one since the pandemic. But yeah, correct. Overall, the mood has been a little more difficult to pass bonds, so certainly. So this is the smallest capital levy request of 16.5 over 4 years. What you'll notice as the capital levy goes up, just a little bit to 7.9, you'll see this goes up a little bit. So now you're up a few more cents. That was very similar. This one's a much different. This has a bigger capital levy. And you'll see you get over to $3 here on this one. And why does it go down in 2029? That's when that 4-year capital levy would mature. And you could renew that. You could ask for a different size bond. There's a lot of options there.
I feel like too, though, kind of what you're saying, Mike, is that I feel like public sentiment, I don't know. I mean, there are gonna be people like you who are nuts and bolts and want to know the dollar of what happens if I do choice A versus choice B or choice C. I get that, but to me, I think the bigger issue is the bond. That's the issue, the elephant in that room is that bond that hangs out there. So we just gotta figure that out. I don't know, strategically relying on someone like yourself to say, hey, we should go for this scenario versus the other. If you're gonna go big or go home, I don't know, but.
I think what we're hearing from some of the experts in public relations is that they're able to communicate all three things at once instead of to piecework it together and then ask for tax, then ask for a tax and ask for a tax. But really, that's all anecdotal. I think, we're kind of amateur statisticians, and I can tell you data wise, how does the trifecta work versus not?
Yeah.
But sentiment is really local and really taxes are very personal. So that I try to share these visuals and these data points as a third party to try and kind of get this to the forefront. Before I talk about other considerations, are there any questions about these example projections?
I'm looking at the rate of voting, so the election passage rate history. So the bonds, are super majority. So some of the states that have switched over to a simple majority, are they passing more bonds at 55 or 50%?
I would say that there's a lot of states that haven't slowed down at all since the pandemic. We've had a 1-2 punch with McCleary, you're fully funded, an increase in state tax rates and the pandemic. We have offices in Dallas, and I believe there was over 100 bonds passed for schools, and it's a very conservative state. They're passing football stadium bonds for 30 million in high schools, while we're struggling in Washington to pass elementary school bonds. So there's states like Florida and Texas and Omaha, and they're still passing bonds at alarming rates. There's some states that are struggling, but I don't know if they're like we are. I mean, we're 8% passage rate this year and 20% passage rate last year.
Did you say 8?
8%.
8.
Single digits.
So 92% not.
One district passed last, in the current year, one district. We're gonna have a handful on the November ballot and hopefully get back above 8%.
Wow.
It's been challenging. I was at the ESD for 15 years. They said, let's go, we need help with bonds, and then pandemic hit, and got a little weird. So I said I had some other considerations too. We'll go briefly over these. You have been running your elections in February since you used to do April and March. Those dates are no longer available. Now you have these 4 in our state, and February has the highest success percentage in EP&Os at 96%, capital levy at 92%, and bonds at 48%. The strong statistical numbers are also backed by strategy, because if for any reason there's a hiccup in Snohomish County, you have seen some of your neighbors have hiccups. You'll notice that some of the next best months are April. You could determine whether or not you have passed Plan B before budget is built, or wait till November and give yourself more time. August is kind of a tough month without the support from the teachers as they're on vacation. Should I run a capital levy or bond with my expiring EP&O levy? That's really, we don't get into the business of giving advice on you should, you shouldn't. We're also, have vested interest in this.
Yeah.
But you'll notice that alone, a capital levy passes 80% of the time. When they're run simultaneously with their EP&O, they have a very good boost, and it doesn't negatively impact the EP&O levy. Bonds, not as huge of a boost. Alone, they pass 44.6% of the time. But with the EP&O, they pass 50% of the time.
Yeah.
And then the trifecta data is so small, there's like 8 or 9 samples.
Check all. It should just be a check all. You like one or none?
All of them.
All three.
And this is a huge sample size on both sides as well. You may not be able to see this quite here, but you might be curious, who has a capital levy in our county, who has a bond? And you might not be in competition with all these schools athletically, we could provide your WIA peers. You know, you look at like a district like Edmonds, it's a different tax base than you, so that everything's a little different. But this does show you where you fall along the average within your county for tax rate.
Thanks. I know. In the school.
No, emissions are very big.
And one last slide here. Some dates to circle on your calendar. Here's the election date. It was on Valentine's Day this year, not this year, not next year, I mean. Resolution filing date is December 15th. So unless you have a special meeting in December, most likely adoption in November. I think Brian shared the timeline earlier.
Yeah.
And the date to circle. This is when you most likely get your ballots. So as you're working with your PR staff and you have this one factual page that you can send out, should you wish, in addition to any kind of regular communications. And then you'll know by the 23rd at the latest. And there's something new that you might have heard about since your last election, and that is the levy pamphlet. You've all seen those voters pamphlets where it says the president and, you know, and there's a little information. Well, now school ballot measures are required to be in the local voters pamphlet. You will submit an explanatory statement for each measure, but you're also responsible for appointing a committee of pro and against. So not just the pros, but the against. And so you'll have to advertise through your normal means and have a board meeting where you accept petitions or applications to be on the pro con. And then it's up to them to move forward and work with the county to submit their information.
Do we get to see what they say before we print it?
No, but the pro committee gets to see it because if they're on top of it, they get to see the against statement and then provide a rebuttal.
Right.
So I don't think you'll customarily see the rebuttal of your pro statement if you know the committee members. But it's that once you appoint them through a board process, it goes to the county and then it's up to them. We're not responsible for managing the process after that, but some have found this a little frustrating. And some counties have policy that would require it to be in district. And that's not happening everywhere yet. So this could be anybody in the state that would like to come out against your.
And they can write a con, they can, really?
Yeah, this happened at the last election. We did have a pro and a con, and we will bring, the plan would be that on November 13th at that board meeting, we will be able to bring forward the committees.
Okay. And are they working on, I know they're talking about with the voters pamphlet, will this be written in plain English? Will this be written in language people understand? I mean, there's the general statement of what we're asking, and the pro and the con can be written.
However they see fit, but the explanatory statement will be written by the district leadership team in
Okay.
conjunction with your legal team.
Gotcha.
And has a certain number of characters, so it's somewhat limited, but yeah, it'll be plain.
Okay.
I mean, plain is maybe not the right word, it'll be understandable.
So it'll be
It'll be very
clear. General, it'll be clear.
Yeah, clear.
Okay.
Any questions or any topics I didn't bring forth? Well, thanks for letting me spend time on your agenda.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Will you be there at WASDA? Are you gonna be there?
I'll be at WASDA, yep, I think we're doing a couple
Bellevue.
things similar to this stuff, yeah,
All right.
big picture though. All right, thank you.
For all the information and thank you for coming all the way out. here.
Happy to be here, thank you.
The next thing on the agenda is our affirmation and commitment to our board superintendent operating policies, policy 1600. Dr. Sweeney, do you want to?
And Brenda will put it up on the screen for me. That'd be great. At the board study session or workshop that we had on August 15th, we did an activity to refresh our memory of what our roles and responsibilities are as a board team, and then also myself as a superintendent, and how does that work together? So this has not changed. We did not make any revisions to the 1600. It's just tonight I'm asking that since we reviewed it at the workshop, then to come back and we would re-sign it. At this time, but no changes were made. We just tried to increase our understanding about our roles and responsibilities and the do's and do nots. So we did a sorting activity.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Any questions? This is an action item. Do we have a motion to affirm and commit to the board superintendent operating policies. Policy 1600.
Make a motion, we approve the affirmation and commitment to the board superintendent operating principles policy 1600.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to affirm and commit to the board superintendent operating policy 1600. Madam Clerk.
Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
I reaffirm.
President Levesque.
Aye.
Director Now.
Aye. Thank you. Next up on the agenda is our second reading and adoption of board policy 4060, distribution of materials. I'd like to welcome our voice of Arlington, Gary Sable, Director of Communication.
Good evening, directors. This is a second reading for the distribution of materials. As you recall from the last meeting, we had no comments from the board. There are no changes aside from what's already shown in the document. Happy to answer any questions there might be.
I hear no questions. Do we have a motion to approve for second reading adoption board policy 4060, distribution of materials?
I make a motion, we adopt board policy 4060 distribution of materials.
It's been moved and seconded to approve board policy 4060, distribution of materials. Madam Clerk.
Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye.
Director Now.
Thank you. Next up is our second reading and adoption of board policy 4210, regulation of dangerous weapons on school premises. We'd like to welcome back to the hot seat, Brian Lewis, our Executive Director of Operations.
Thank you. At the first reading, I pointed out to you the changes to this policy governing the presence of dangerous weapons on school campuses. You may remember that there's a laundry list of weapons that are included in this classification. There's also an exception included in the language, and that exception applies to firearms, not to the other weapons that are listed in that first section. And the change that occurred was a change in the language that aligns with RCW that allows for attendees at meetings of the school board that are held off of district-owned or leased property to carry a concealed weapon concealed firearm to that meeting. And this, as an example, would apply if the board were to have a meeting at the city of Arlington at the airport, at the operations center there. That's an example of where concealed carry could be allowed in that situation. So that is the extent of the language changes in revised policy.
Are there any comments, questions, proposed changes? Do our student advisors want to weigh in on this one? I don't think I have anything to add. Do we have a motion to approve board policy 4210, regulation of dangerous weapons on school premises?
I make a motion, we adopt board policy 4210, regulation of dangerous weapons on school.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt board policy 4210, regulation of dangerous weapons on school premises. Madam Clerk.
Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque.
Aye.
Director Now.
Aye.
Thank you, Brian. I had to Google what a DIRC was, because I didn't know what that was. Now I know.
Are you gonna share?
Oh, do you want to know? It's a very sharp, pointy thing that you can do some damage with. Okay.
Like a bayonet.
Like a thing they have in prison.
Or like
I
a
don't
shape.
know. Like that.
There
Now you know. You learned something new. What'd you learn at school board meeting tonight? DIRC.
Okay, thanks, Maureen, always keeping us.
All right, next items are our informational items, and we'll start with our superintendent's report.
So last week, we had at Howler, our summer academy, so there were about 120 staff members, mostly certificated, but also some classified, some paraeducators, attending a variety of different learning opportunities and sessions. So that was great. We also had the start of all these, the back to school activities. So we had Eco Days, and then coming up, we have Link Crew Day on the 5th. We have elementary schools are doing back to school activities on the 31st. So this week, so a lot of back to school activities because school starts a week from Wednesday. A week from this Wednesday, school starts. That's incredible. Stress. And then, so there's been I mentioned the last time that the community resource fair we had at President's. Well, this Saturday, Gary and I spent time at the Still Tribal Center at a resource fair there, providing just information, answering questions, and also giving opportunity for parents to sign up for the Title VI grant that supports the cultural enrichment activities for our tribal families and our all students. And so that was great. It was a good time, and got some good interactions and great food, I must say, and very interesting food there for the day. It was awesome. This week, starting tomorrow, staff are coming back together in the schools and they're doing their building directed day. So it's beginning to happen. Then Wednesday, we have our kickoff for the whole district. So all 700 plus staff will be at the VPAC, and we come together as a whole staff. We have a guest speaker, Shelley Moore, coming, and she will talk about inclusionary practices, and she'll be awesome. And then we're doing a group. Like we did, I don't see it in here, but we did a group picture last year.
Yeah.
So we'll do another one with the drone. Or I think you're using the drone, are you, Gary?
Correct,
Yeah, using the drone. So that a lot happening. We also had orientation for our new staff. Our certificated new orientation was last week, and really we had only like 6 people because we narrowed that down. But today we had the orientation for classified, and we had it's felt like 25 to 30 people upstairs for orientation. So a lot of prep, a lot of planning, a lot of excitement. I'm really excited about school starting next week. Are you excited, Nathan?
I love school.
That's the right answer. What about you, Mariska? You're senior year.
I honestly am really excited. Like, I've missed school too much this summer. I did school, but I need school again. Like, I'm looking forward to the football game on Friday. That'll be fun. And I'm just gonna try and make it the best year I can, be involved as much as I can.
That's all.
Thank you. Next up is our legislative update and discussion.
So my request is to have Dr. Sweeting, if you would connect with Ms. Herman and find out dates that might be appropriate for us. I've been in contact with our legislators, the 3I, Ron Muzal, Guy Chavers, and Dave Paul, and would like to see if we'd have an opportunity for them to come up. I don't know what that would look like, if it's an assembly, if it's just talking about participate in government, because decisions are made that affect you, and we want you could, Mr. Shalati, I only know that name as a history person, but I think it would be a wonderful opportunity before or after election. I just think sometime in this term would be great. But if you would like to reach out to the powers that be and then get back with me, and then I can communicate. I know Dave Paul is available, Guy Shavers is available, Ron might have, I'm not sure what his schedule looks like, but
Yeah, we want to have our doors open to all legislators to come.
Yeah.
And to visit the schools and see what's happening in our schools, so they see it themselves.
Right.
So it's always an open invitation, but we'll talk more about that.
that'd be great. Yeah. And I have my, we're starting back up again. I think we had July off, but we're back up tomorrow. I meet with Marissa. Marissa, and get back on our plans of monthly meetings, and we'll do our September General Assembly. Again, if there's any particular thoughts you have, I know there's a lot, Debbie printed this off for me, General Assembly over 100. But if there's something that I need to fine tune, let me know, and I'll be planning on attending that later in September.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sherry. Next up is our comments from board members. It's the opportunity to share what is important in your world. I'd like to start with our student advisors.
Yeah, I want to. I don't hate school. I don't know, thinking that. Arlington is my home. I love everything to do it. Yeah, I'm actually very excited to start the new year. I'm going to an ASL 2 class as well as a graphic art 3 class. Anyways, I'm very grateful for. I've gotten to know my teachers really well, so I'm excited to further my bond with them. But I'm also very recently, my sister had her baby shower. She's expecting in November, so I'm looking forward to being another uncle to a little baby niece.
That's excited. Thanks for sharing. Mariska.
Not much more than I can say, but happy back to school season to everybody. I hope you are all as excited as I am. You can't see it, but I am like, I tell my mom, I was like, I'm so excited for school. Can we go to back to school shopping and stuff? I still haven't gotten my back to school shopping, but we'll get there. I don't think I have anything else to say. Nothing really exciting. I mean, I'm not at school, so nothing exciting has been happening. But yeah, that's all I can say at the moment.
Thank you. Director Kelly, anything further?
Yeah, I'm all excited for school. Yay. I'm on the other side of you. I'm the teacher. And yeah, we don't have a full roster yet, so I'm starting out with maybe 10, which is a low number right now. But I have feelings that will grow. And I'm nervous. I mean, I'm happy you're excited. I'm sure the kids that are coming to me are excited. I'm more just like, what's waiting for me? So, and mixed feeling, but yes, and I also like the idea. There's something came up about this being that opportunity for like a new beginning for people that aren't in the school realm. Like, it's funny because I felt like I've always been this way. Like every September, it's like I can be a new me and there's new opportunities. And it's like a mid-year, like a reset. And I think that's kind of exciting. So like, think about that. Ponder that you have an opportunity. Anyway, just my thoughts on that. So I'm looking forward to, yes, next week.
Thank you. Director Kingman, would you like to share?
If you went to school all year round, you can avoid all the anxiety and the excitement and the work about starting off in September. And Dr. Sweeten, I owe you a response and some other information that I haven't gotten back to you yet, and I will this week.
Oh, okay.
Voicemails that you've left. I haven't responded. I'm sorry, I will.
Oh, no.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Director Kingman. Appreciate that. Director Knapp, would you like to share anything?
Sure. I mean, we're just wrapping up summer adventures at our house, and I think over the last 2 weeks, my kids have each grown 2 to 3 inches. So back to school shopping
Wow,
is happening. And yeah, my 9th grader was kind of bummed to miss the band camp, and that looks amazing. So we've been following on YouTube and stuff, and just super excited for band this year. May have cried a few tears thinking about my oldest going to high school, but I know not because anything against the high school. He's just getting older, and I really love my children and the time that we spend together. So there is, the equal like excitement, anxiety, like something is ending, sad, but new things are happening. So overall excited.
Thank you for sharing. Director Ray, anything from you?
I recently found out about these, I was watching news reports, and this particular brand I'm looking at here on the screen is called the Yonder patch. I think it's YLNDR, but anyways, it's like it's a little cell phone pouch. Put the cell phone in when you get there at school, and it's kind of locked in there. And then when you leave, you put the little magnet on the wall. Have you seen that yet? Perfect, yeah. I think they look awesome. I think they are a needed item for our school district. And I think we should look into maybe implementing that somehow district-wide, that cell phones are locked and secured away, unable to be accessed during the school day.
They use those at concert venues now.
They do, yes, yep. I saw them at news. Several school districts are doing it where we would not be the first.
Fascinating. Thanks for sharing.
You bet.
I want to share that my kids are also anticipating going back to school shortly, and we brought in school supplies we're really excited about, and there's still some anxiety about homework and being tired and having to get up early and remember a lot of things and follow directions and listen to all the directions and follow all the directions. A lot of concern that that's not happening very well. So we're really excited. I have a rising sophomore and a rising senior, and it feels like we're wrapping up childhood, and I just want to hold on to it as long as possible because it just goes way too fast. And today I want to say happy birthday to my husband. So, and that's all I have. I want to remind everybody about our next meeting. We have September 11th is our next regular board meeting right here at 6 o'clock.
Now, is that the six? Are we going to the two sessions? That's.
That is-
That's the 25th.
That's
yeah.
what's on the 25th, okay.
That's when I bring you granola bars.
Yes.
We'll have.
Cups of coffee.
And if there's nothing further, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. Madam Clerk.
Director Ray,
That.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Now.
Aye. And then if we could just do that thing we did right at the beginning of the meeting before it started, if we could do that again with Dr. Sweeting, just take a quick little,
So it's good camera. This time.
the good camera. All right, thank you. And then drive safe.